Welcome to the Rustic Garden. Today I'm going to show you how to seed start tomatoes in the ground. These are a variety of cherry tomato called Midnight Snack. They're an All-America Selections winner. This is also a paid placement video for All-America Selections, and I'm going to talk about them as I go through the video. This will be a 6 or 8 part series of taking your tomatoes from seeds, planting them, and going all the way through harvest. I'm going to show you all the steps in between. You just don't have to seed start your tomatoes in seed trays like this, indoors or on your deck, unless you want to. The benefit is sometimes you can get them started really early, get 6 or 8 weeks worth of growth. But if you have a good 80 days left of a growing season, you can start your tomatoes right in the ground. And the key for these tomatoes, these are 4 weeks old, just about 4 weeks old. They were planted obviously 4 weeks ago, but some of the nights got into the mid-30s and into the 40s, so these aren't quite as big as they normally would be. But when the nights are staying in the 50s, you can go ahead and seed start your tomatoes. I want to go over how you set up the soil because it's really, really important. Now remember, we're seed starting tomatoes here, so you don't want to kill them with too much love. Do not add in your organic fertilizers, bagged compost or humus. If you have real compost that's fully broken down in your yard, absolutely use that. I just want to tell you about a mistake I used. This is just some potting mix, so just add a little bit of container mix or potting mix or something that's going to make a nice planting bed. Over my 2-pound tomatoes, I put down 2 bags of this composted humus and manure, and again, it was in bags. It wasn't fully broken down, so I put it right into the soil, mixed it in, planted my tomatoes in there, and the decomposition process, or the composting process, really harmed my tomatoes. It was competing for the nitrogen and harming the plants. When you're starting seeds, don't give them too much love. Don't put in all this bagged compost and stuff like that. It could harm the plant as the root system is developing. So all you're going to really do is clear out a space. If you use mulch, remove the wood. You don't want the wood getting in the way of the developing seeds. When wood breaks down, when the microbes break down wood, it can take nitrogen from your soil. So again, a little bit of potting mix or whatever you have around, and really get in and loosen up the soil. What I'm going to be planting today is called Midnight Snack. It's a tomato from All-America Selections. Well, actually, it's not a tomato from All-America Selections, and this is a mistake that sometimes people make. They actually do seed proving trials every year, and the seeds that are coming in aren't theirs. They're a nonprofit organization that do an unbiased seed trial, and they select the best seeds and declare them All-America Selections winners. So this is a Midnight Snack cherry tomato variety. It looks like this. It has the nice dark purpley color on there that is really triggered by the sun. And some of the struggle with those types of tomatoes is they looked cool, but they didn't have great flavor. This one won the award to not only have the anthocyanin in it, the part that gives you that purpley color, but it also has a great flavor, and that's what made it stand out at the 2017 seed trials, and it got declared AAS winner. So I've mixed in the potting mix into here, and we are going to go down quite far. This is not where the seed's going to be germinating, but this is where the root system will get to, and we're going to put a little bit, about a tablespoonful of an organic fertilizer right down in the bottom, and just mix it in well. As the tomato develops and it gets stronger and has a massive root system, it'll find its way down there. We'll do side dressing and other fertilizing as we go along. You just want a firm planting base. This is all you need. Some people like to mound it up. You could do that if you want to, but I find this is the easiest way to do it. So take whatever seed you want to use, and I do encourage you to grow along as I grow. You can go to their website and you'll find seed carriers that carry the Midnight Snack. Again, AAS doesn't sell the seeds. They do the seed proving trials, and they test these seeds nationally, prove them locally, and they find winning varieties that work for us. So let me just concentrate. 3 seeds. You want to put in 3. Just do a triangle. Depth isn't going to matter that much. What matters most is actually temperature. You want about 55-degree nights. Push them in about 1/2 of an inch. Cover them up. And what we gave them was a nice firm planting base. My soil is even a little bit heavy. It's got clay. You just don't want the rain to come in, splash them, and move them around. Just a nice firm planting base. Now again, 4 weeks later, they come up and they look like this. And you want to plant 3 seeds. You don't want to be waiting all this time for 1 seed not to germinate and come up. And at this point, I'm going to pick the 2 best and remove one. Let this grow a little bit longer. But this is all you need to do, is to get your tomato seed started in the ground. And I want to encourage people to do this, because you don't have to do anything more elaborate. I don't want barriers in the way from you getting out and planting things that you like in your garden. You can go ahead and put the seeds in just like this. Most important thing is don't harm your germinating seeds with too much love. Last year's garden soil, we're not putting a lot of amendments, if any, on top. We put some down deep, about 6, 8, 12 inches. Water your seeds about every 3 days. That's what they're going to need the most. Don't add any fertilizers. Just let them germinate. In about 4 weeks, you'll have something that looks like this. And then we'll get into feeding them with a water-soluble organic fertilizer. Just keep the water coming every 3 days. Get them growing, let them establish, and you're going to have strong, vibrant plants by the time we get through this. 55-degree nights or so, about 80 days, and you can just go pick up a pack of seeds, put them right in the ground. Welcome to the Rested Garden. Today is June 17th. This is my second video in a series of seed starting a cherry tomato in the ground. And the reason I wanted to do something that sounds so simple as just starting your seeds in the ground is because I want people to go out and grow their own tomatoes. You don't need a fancy setup where you're starting stuff indoors if you don't want to. All you do is you just really need a growing season of about 90 to 120 days, and you just match a tomato where its maturity will come within your gardening zone. So anyway, this tomato is 7 weeks old. We did the first video on May 26th, and this tomato is actually now 3 weeks old, and it's growing pretty well. And in another 2 to 3 weeks, it will actually catch up to this, because the temperatures now are what tomatoes love. 80-degree days, low 90 degrees, 60-degree nights, and the tomatoes are really starting to take off. The cherry tomato that I'm growing is an indigo variety. It gets that nice dark purple color when it's exposed to the sun. It has the anthocyanin in it. The variety is called Midnight Snack. It's a 2017 All-America Selections winner. And if you're interested in growing this tomato, I recommend you go to their website and you can find seed companies that are selling Midnight Snack. It's supposed to be a cherry tomato with flavor in the indigo family. And if you've grown them before, and I've done this, is the indigo variety is beautiful looking, but sometimes the flavor is a little bit lacking. But the Midnight Snack is supposed to have jumped that gap to having a beautiful purple tomato that gets that deep color from the sun, and it's going to have the sweetness of cherry tomatoes that you like. So the tomatoes here are now 7 weeks old, and remember, I started with 3, we thinned them out. We're going to have to thin these down to 1, and I know people don't like doing that. Now the reason I kept 2 in here is just to show you what the growth looks like. When these got to about this height, you could have just picked the strongest one, but these are going to be massive plants, so you do have to remove one. And I think I'm actually going to go with this one here, so I'm going to just remove this one. Ouch. We're going to drop in a stake. This stake will not be strong enough to take care of this tomato as it gets bigger, but we'll drop in a larger one behind it as the series goes on. Now if this plant was bigger, I would put the stake back a little bit further. You just don't want to put the post in or the stake in really close to the stem, or you'll shear off a lot more roots. Go about 2 inches back, drop it in, good 6 inches, and we're just going to loosely start training the tomato up the stake. Done a lot of videos on tying them down, and the whole key is just leave a nice gap in here so that you don't strangle the stem as it grows. And I don't know if you can see this, but you can see the purple streaking starting in here. And this is all you need to start guiding it up. This plant is going to get massive in the next 2 weeks. In the next video, I'm going to talk to you about pruning this and how do you manage it for size. And this seedling is 3 weeks old. And remember, we started with 3 seeds. And we did that because there's a chance some of them might not germinate. And it's a good thing that we did, because only 1 came up. So this plant's 7 weeks old. This plant is 3 weeks old. This was seed started when we were having colder nights, so it's not quite as tall 7 weeks down the line as this one's going to be. This one is going to take off. Tomatoes love the warm weather, so 80-degree days, upper 60-degree nights, these tomatoes are going to take off. Thin out, well, don't thin out actually, remove any weeds that are growing around your plant. I'm just going to take out a couple. And I'm actually going to pinch off the bottoms here. We'll do more pruning in the next video, but we're going to make a gap in here between the ground and the leaves. But what we're going to do today is just some simple side dressing. This is a 5-5-5 organic fertilizer. Just try and keep the NP and K around the 5-5-5. This is about a tablespoon. Just sprinkle it around the whole area. Nothing fancy. This is just a little bit of a top dressing. Just scrape it in to the top of the soil so it mixes in, gets wet, and as it rains and as you water, as that fertilizer is broken down by the soil biology, it will get to the root system. We're also going to give this a drink of liquid soluble fertilizer, and that's how I take care of a lot of my plants. Now these plants really haven't been fed yet, except for an occasional toss of fertilizer as I'm watering my determined varieties back there. So every 10 to 14 days, a water soluble fertilizer. We just did a top dressing. We'll do that again when the tomato actually starts forming fruit. We'll also put down some lime. But this is a 5-1-1 organic fertilizer. Just soak the leaves, soak it in. It's a little bit late in the evening, and sometimes people get stressed out that now that I've wet the leaves, disease are going to come. That doesn't happen typically with a healthy tomato. Of course, you don't want to have your tomatoes soaked with water all the time, you know, at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night and they stay wet. But I've got a good 3 hours left of daylight. This will dry. It's perfectly fine to put water on your plant. That's what nature does to the plant when the rain comes down. So don't get overstressed. Bottom watering when your plants are bigger and there's disease issues is a great idea, because it keeps the water down there and it's not going to spread any diseases that may be on the plant. But when they're little like this, or your plants are healthy, you can soak the leaves perfectly fine. Now we'll soak this one too. We're not going to grow it to full size here because these plants will compete, but I just want to show you how this looks in a couple of weeks when we come back and we do the rest of the video for this. So the other thing that we can do, if you wanted to now, is you could bring in your mulch and you could cover the ground. Right now I don't have it within reach, but just put down about an inch worth of mulch after you put down the top dressing, and that will again feed your plant. The mulch will help conserve water and keep it in there, but you could do that now, or you could do that in about a week. So again, all you really have to do is get a stake in the ground about 2 to 3 inches away from the stem, lightly tie it, a side dressing about a tablespoon of organic fertilizer worked into the top, and then start feeding this plant every 10 to 14 days with a water soluble fertilizer. I'm using organic products for this part of my bed. If you're going to use a chemical fertilizer, go ahead and use it at 1/4 strength. You just don't need your NP and K to be as high as the chemical fertilizers are. That's actually what I think is the biggest drawback on them. There's some other reasons, but they just give you too much nitrogen. You don't want to overgrow the leaves of your tomatoes with too much nitrogen. So if you use the chemical fertilizers, use them at about 1/4 strength or half strength, trying to keep everything at a 5-5-5 or less. And if you're looking for new varieties of vegetable plants, check out All America's Selections. I'll put up the link on the screen. Welcome to the Rusted Garden. Today is July 3rd. It's been about 16 days since the second part of growing cherry tomatoes from seed to harvest. These plants have tripled in size since then. You can check out the second video and see how much they've grown. So what we're going to do today is we're going to drop in this 8-foot post. We're also going to get in there, bottom prune. I'll talk about that. We'll talk about removing different suckers. Because this is a cherry tomato plant, we will have to remove some of the suckers in the joint, and I'll show you how to identify them and some thoughts on why you may thin them out. And basically, cherry tomatoes get massive. They get a lot of growth, so you want to control for disease. This is the smaller plant that's really gotten larger. That's going to have to get moved because it's too many plants there, and I think I'll just relocate that one. You can see small holes in the plants. These leaves are wet because I put down some insect dust last night in the evening, and I rinse it off in the morning. And I'll talk about why we would do that, how we take care of potential problems, slugs. We'll use iron phosphate, we'll get mulch down. We're going to talk about a whole lot. And over here you can see my tomatoes next door are having some problems, and I'll show you how we prune the gap right in there so that it's a little bit harder for maybe an insect problem over here to jump over to your tomato plant. And then I'll talk about spraying for diseases like early blight and different kinds of problems. So we're going to cover a whole lot. But this tomato is doing really well. We're going to take care of it. And let's just get started with, let's start at the bottom. We'll start with bottom pruning. So this plant is about 36 inches tall, and you want to take off about 20% of the leaves down here. So slowly take the leaves off. You don't want to shock the plant by taking off too many. So 20% of 36 is about 7 inches, and we're going to remove the leaves to about here. And what that does is that starts creating a disease barrier between the soil and the bottom leaves, and that's how a lot of spores get onto your plants and work their way up. It also helps if you've got any kind of hopping insects that need to jump up on the leaves, establish themselves and work their way up. It creates a nice gap for that. And all you're going to do is cut off the leaves. And that starts the gap. You can go slowly. When this plant grows some more, we'll remove a couple more leaves. Let's take out all the weeds. Don't know why my voice just cracked. And then we're going to put down mulch. I like using shredded hardwood. It has a lot of surface area. It locks together, so if you're on a slope where it rains hard, it doesn't wash away. And it decays really quickly because of all the surface area, so it can be worked into your soil in a year or two. A lot of people say you can't put wood on your garden soil because it's going to compete with your plant for the nitrogen. That's true, but not when it sits on top of your soil like this. And remember, we're going to remove that plant. When it sits on top, it's just a barrier. It'll keep moisture in your soil. You'll have to water less. Keeps the moisture even, helps prevent fruit cracking. But this is all you do to set up a nice disease barrier between the soil and your bottom leaves. Now, pruning isn't as complicated as you might think it is. In fact, you can really prune any way that you want. All you're doing is reducing sometimes the number of leaves, but more importantly, the full production stems off of your tomato plants. And if you don't have disease or insect issues, you can really prune less because the tomato will be perfectly fine. But in my area, with the humidity, early blight always comes in. You want to prune out your tomatoes to really manage the size. Let more air circulate through there and just kind of maintain the plant better. And again, when I'm doing this, I may take off 3 stems or 4 stems. You don't have to follow it exactly. Just sort of understand the principles and decide to do it how you want based on your zone. So you have the main production stem. It comes out of the ground, it grows up, a leaf comes out right here, and then the stem keeps growing, and right in the joint here between the leaf and the main growing stem is a sucker. Now a sucker will turn into a full production stem just like this. It will produce leaves, it will produce fruit, and every single joint will produce a sucker, and this little guy here is going to turn into a big sucker just like this, or a production stem, and it will grow, a leaf will come out, a leaf will come out, and then eventually the flower clusters form and it will produce fruit. So you can keep as many of these as you want, but you do want to thin them out down at the bottom, because now I have the main stem right here, fruit producing. I have this sucker that I'm going to let grow as a production stem, so that's my second, and then there's a third one over here, and then each of these stems will produce suckers. For example, this one is producing another one. Here's the main stem, there's the leaf, and right in the middle is the sucker or production stem, and it will produce flowers. So starting at the bottom, I'm going to remove this one down here. I don't want another full stem growing out of there. There was a leaf right here that we just cut off coming out here. This is a sucker. I'm not going to keep that one. Just snap it out. And again, it's creating the space here. So then when we come up here, I'm going to keep this one. That's going to produce. We're keeping the main stem right here, and in the joint it has a leaf, the main stem, another sucker here. I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to keep this one, and as my plant gets taller, I tend to leave more of the suckers to become production stems. And over here you can see the leaf, the main stem right there, and this back here is another sucker that is really growing nice and strong, and I'm going to keep that one. And up there you can see the flowers. But it's really a matter of preference, and you're removing the suckers to allow airflow, manage the size. And when you do remove them, yes, you're removing some flowers, but you're also allowing the plant to concentrate on growing the other fruits that are in the other clusters. And again, it's a part of really a personal preference. There's no exact way. Cherry tomatoes I tend to prune more because they're so prolific and they just keep growing and growing and growing. My determinate varieties I prune very little, but it's all up to you. But that's the basic way on how you figure out how to prune. And again, you have the main stem, a leaf comes out, the main stem continues, and right in the joint is the sucker. This is a full grown one. This is one that's a little bit smaller right here. So main stem, leaf, there's the sucker, and eventually it will produce flowers right up there. But it's kind of like if you go like this, stem, or the leaf would be your thumb, your middle finger would be your stem, and growing right out of the joint is the sucker, and that's what you would remove. Alright, let's get to staking this plant to this post that I just put in. This is an 8-foot post. This was the original guide post, and we're just going to tie that together, nothing fancy. This cherry tomato is the Midnight Snack. It's an All-America Selections winner for 2017, and actually the 2018 All-America Selection winners are going to be coming out this month, I believe. They're a non-profit organization that are celebrating their 85th anniversary, and they only do one thing, is they go and they hold seed trials yearly to find new winning varieties of vegetables and flowers. They don't sell the seeds, they just declare the winners, and I really recommend going to their site. I'll put a link up on the screen, and you can find the newest seed varieties for vegetables and for flowers, and you can grow something in your garden that other people aren't growing quite yet. Now, we stake this to a smaller stake just to guide it up, and this is going to outweigh, literally, this stake, and it's not going to hold. So we dropped in an 8-foot stake. It's a 1x1 from Home Depot. It's 8 feet. I think these are maybe $4 or something like that, but it's really, really worth it. All we do, and make sure the flower clusters don't get wedged in between here, or the leaves don't get wedged in between here, just tie the stake over just like this. Nice and tight, and this will be plenty of support for your cherry tomato to grow up. And this is going to get 6 or 8 feet tall. Cherry tomatoes grow really, really well. And I broke a flower cluster, even after saying don't. So be careful when you do it. Luckily, cherry tomatoes are super prolific, so I won't even notice that in a few weeks. And this will provide enough support. Now again, I'll go and tie it up here so it's nice and solid. But this will be a nice stake for the tomato to grow up. And again, when you're tying the main stem or different stems off, like for instance, this one I'm going to leave I talked about. So I'm going to want to pull it into here. And you can leave a nice big loop like that. And you're just helping control the growth of the plant. This one over here, I'll pull in tight like that, leaving a nice gap. But we're just going to grow this tomato straight up here. We're going to prune out some of the suckers as I mentioned, but there's going to be plenty of growth all around this stake, all the way going up to 8 feet, and we're going to have tons of tomatoes. Okay, let's get to sort of disease management now. I'll talk to you a little bit about spraying and controlling for the problems that come into your garden. Alright, now there's a lot of products for your garden. Some of you may want to be 100% organic, that's fine. Some of you may use the chemicals like I do occasionally, that's fine too. It's all up to you, and what I find is based on your gardening zone, based on the insects, based on the diseases, you're going to need different products, and that's why I show all the different ones in my video. Now I'm not going to go into depth for all of these, but I will be doing videos over the next 2 weeks on all these products if you want to subscribe and learn how to use them in your garden. What I find is the best gardener is the educated gardener. Use the different tools when the situation arises and do your best. And in fact, there's a lot of talk about organic gardening, which is great, but if you want to stick with organic, go. You know, just be 99% organic. Do it the way you want to. If you have a problem that can't be resolved organically, use another product and then go right back to it. You're still an organic gardener and you're still going to be fine. So let's start with disease. So over on my plants over here, I had an infestation of insects. You can't really see it here, but there are white flecks in there. Maybe aphids, maybe spider mites. Also some the early blight is starting to set into my plants. They come to weaker leaves. The point is that when you start seeing signs, it's a little bit too late to spray. So let's start with prevention. So when your plant is looking healthy and you know you have diseases that come into the area, we're talking diseases right now, not insects. Start with prevention. And baking soda is a great way to prevent diseases from getting hold on your leaves. 1 tablespoon to a gallon. Always test spray any new sprays on some leaves. Wait 24 hours, 48 hours, see if there's any damage. 1 tablespoon in a gallon. Spray the top, spray the undersides, and what this does is it makes the leaf surface unhospitable to the diseases that are coming. And that's the whole goal with all of these kinds of sprays, is they make the leaf surface change in a way that the diseases don't take hold. They all work differently. But baking soda is organic. It's the least I don't know, chemical based, I guess. It's just plain old baking soda. And you would spray every 7 to 14 days, top side, underside, but always test spray. Now, if you start getting a breakout, maybe you notice this isn't necessarily a leaf disease, but you notice something's happening on your leaf, you can go to Serenade. This is a great spray that does really well in controlling problems. It's for organic gardening, and this can take care of the problem. I use this a lot. And typically for me, I start with baking soda in June, start working my way up to Serenade for July and August, and if this works, I stop there. Now you have another chemical, which is Daconol or Daconil, not sure how to pronounce it. It's the best fungicide out there for actually stopping outbreaks. It works really, really well. I had to use it a couple years ago. However, it is a chemical and it does have health issues depending on what you read, and I would recommend that you go and you read about this before you use it in your garden and make a personal decision. But if you're having a crop that's being wiped out, the Daconol can really make a difference. We'll get to spraying in a second. Now, we have holes in the leaves. These are insects. Those aren't snails and slugs, might be spider mites, might be beetles of some sort. 7 dust you can put right on the leaves, the lower leaves, and the insects will walk through that. That will kill them. I put this on in the evening, I wash it off in the morning. If you don't want to use 7 dust because that is a chemical, you can use diatomaceous earth, and this works by getting into the joints of the insects, and you would just sprinkle that on the lower leaves. Sprinkle some on the bottom too. They will walk through this, it gets into the joints, it grinds down the waxy surface on their shell, and they dehydrate. Now, if you don't want to use dusts for whatever reason, or you see the insects on there, Captain Jack's dead bug spray works really, really well, but you do have to contact the insects with that, and that will kill them off. And this is an organic product too, I believe. So that's a couple of ways to deal with diseases. That's a couple of ways to deal with insects. And then finally, if you have snails and slugs, the best product is iron phosphate, and you just, that's it. Sprinkle it down like that. They eat the baited pellets. It kills the snails and slugs, and this has changed the way that I can garden. All right, so now we're at the mode, say we're at preventative spraying for diseases, and it's over here on my other plants. I just want to show you how to do it. This is the Serenade, and I wouldn't put dust down and then spray. I would spray and let it dry. But just soak the leaves down on the tops everywhere, and then make sure you get underneath of the leaves. That's where a lot of the diseases take hold, and you really want to spend time getting on the underside. That's most important. And you would do this anywhere from 7 to 14 days. Varies on the outbreak and what's going on. Now, I did say we were also going to look at taking care of disease jumping from one plant to another. And instead of pruning off entire leaves, just cut some leaves off and make a gap just like that. That allows wind and air to circulate through, keep your plant dry, take care of any problems, and it stops the leaves from touching where things can transfer much more easily. All right, I've covered a lot. I'm going to take a pause and just think about anything else I need to cover that I said I would. All right, I think I pretty much covered everything. That's the total amount of suckers and leaves that I removed off of the Midnight Snack from All America's Selections. Took leaves off the bottom, remember, about 20%. Took out some of the suckers, which do turn into production stems and have flowers and fruit, but we want to control the mass of the plant, and it's going to vary based on your zone. Also took out some leaves here by just trimming the leaves back so there was a nice gap. When it comes to disease prevention, insect prevention, whatever you choose, to use, just stick with the routine. If it's taking care of plants every 7 days, every 14 days, stick to your routine. And again, I want to highly recommend going to All America Selections. Welcome to the Rusted Garden. This is the 4th video in growing a cherry tomato from start to finish. This is the midnight snack from All America Selections, and it's been about 6 weeks since the last video where we really started the spraying, pruned it up, tied it up to the stake, and let it go. 6 weeks later, it is over 7 feet tall. This is the whole length of it. It's almost to the top of that stake, and it's filled with maybe hundreds of tomatoes. And that dark purple that you see on the tops is the anthocyanin. That's what turns purple when sunlight hits it. And as you come down further, you see the larger tomatoes are darker. The more sun they get, the darker they get. And down towards the bottom, you can see the beautiful color of the tomatoes that are ready, and we'll do a harvest and I'll show you what they look like. Now the trick with these tomatoes is they're beautiful, but they're slow to mature. So when they turn this color, like you look right in here, they look right, but you want them to go a little bit further, like 7 or 10 days past where you might think they're ready to pick, because at that point they get a whole lot sweeter. And I find that's just one of the things that seem to happen with the indigo variety tomatoes that have the anthocyanin in there. When they turn red, let them go another 7 to 10 days and they're that much sweeter. Today we're going to talk about the spraying, continued spraying. Right on here, these little spots, that's leaf spot. That came in when my temperatures or my climate changed here. We were getting more rain, a little bit cooler weather. We'll talk about Epsom salts and the feedings and just what do I do from mid-August to keep this plant going and producing, so that, you know, this will keep going until the frost comes later in October. Now the feeding for this cherry tomato has really been every 10 to 14 days a water-soluble fertilizer. And a water-soluble fertilizer is an N, P, and K, or the nutrients your plant can absorb immediately. So they're immediately available to your plant that can use them. And this plant has pretty much been getting, again, every 10 to 14 days, either worm compost tea, or it was getting the fish fertilizer, the fish emulsion, which is a 5-1-1 fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, 5-1-1. Now, come mid-July, I give my plants a little bit of a boost, and what I gave them was some all-purpose fertilizer, 5-5-5, and it's just basically a side dressing. And I do this again come mid-August when a lot of production has been going on. So I've already done this once, which was not in the video, but somewhere in mid-July when the plant's really producing flowers and getting going. So I take about, that's 1 tablespoon, spread it around the base of the plant. Stay about 4 inches away from there, but this is an organic fertilizer. You can't really damage your plant with it. So about 2 tablespoons around the base of the plant, about 4 inches out, and just scratch it into the surface. This is an insoluble fertilizer, so the soil biology is going to have to break it down, and this will just provide it some nice food over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Now, at full production, mid-August, this tomato plant has probably almost 100 tomatoes on there. I'm going to give it some Epsom salt. Now, there's a lot of myths about how great this is for your plants. It helps. It's like giving it a vitamin. But you don't need to use this weekly. You don't need to use this every month. 1 or 2 times a year is perfectly fine. Don't overuse the Epsom salt. All you're giving your plant is magnesium and sulfur in this. And how I use it is, this is a 2-gallon container, so it's 1 tablespoon per 1 gallon of water. You could use 2 tablespoons if you want, but you don't really need that much. So in here I put in 2 tablespoons of the Epsom salt. And today, instead of the organic fertilizers, I'm going to use the chemical fertilizer, which I know does freak people out, but I always want to stress that chemical fertilizers don't harm your plant, they don't harm you. Overuse and abuse of these fertilizers solely can damage your soil, and probably will damage your soil. But if you're putting in compost, you're using organic fertilizers, come mid-August, when my plants are really producing, I like to give them the chemical fertilizer at half strength. This is a 15-30, 15 NPK. That's too much. Do a 1/4 strength or a half strength. So this is 2 gallons. Instead of putting in 2 tablespoons, I'm just putting in 1. So it's about half strength. You could go a little bit lower. And you're not going to be able to see this, but it just covers all the macro and micronutrients. And I like to do that for my plants mid-August, because now this plant is set up to finish growing through the rest of its it's time really. It'll go through late September when the cold starts coming in and it starts dying off. How do I do it? 2 gallons, just water it in, just like that. And I'll probably put in a full gallon of water. We'll just do this as I'm talking. Wet the insoluble fertilizer you put down as a side dressing and scratched into the surface, and then just soak down this whole area. And that's going to be 1 gallon worth of water in there, and that's going to be enough to set this tomato plant up for the rest of its life. Maryland Zone 7, sometime towards the end of September, not usually, middle of October we get a frost, and that will kill this plant off. Alright, let's talk about the spraying. And this spot pattern right on here is leaf spot. There's no yellow halo around these dots, so I'm getting it under a bit of control. When you have these spots and then you have yellow halos around them, it means it's active. But let me show you the spray. I use a baking soda spray because I'm going to be eating a lot of these cherry tomatoes now, and baking soda is perfectly fine to, spray and eat in the same day. Let me show you how I make that spray. So this is a baking soda spray, and the first thing I want to stress is anytime you're trying a new spray in your garden, if it comes from me, anybody, anything you read, even products you buy in the store, test spray. That means spray a couple of branches, a couple of leaves, wait 48 hours and look for damage, because you can damage a whole garden by using a spray that works for mostly everybody else, but for whatever reason in your area it damages your plant. So always test spray. So this is baking soda. I'm using 1 tablespoon in a gallon of water. That hissing you hear is because the seal on here isn't sealing tightly, so some air is coming out of this from the air pressure. 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. You can use up to 2 tablespoons of baking soda, but here's kind of the kicker that's really important. In May, early June, April, when it's colder and cooler, I can use 2 tablespoons in a gallon of water on my tomato plants. That's when leaf spot normally rolls into my area. It just happened to come back because of this crazy weather we've been having. But come late June, July, and August, when the heat is here, if I use 2 tablespoons in here, it damages my leaves. So I'm using 1 tablespoon. Really, really important. I want to stress that you understand that when you're using sprays, when the temperatures are cooler, sometimes you can have a greater concentration of baking soda in there, or the sprays. When it gets warmer, you have to really be careful, because as soon as the temperatures get over 90 in a direct light, you can damage your plants with sprays. So spray in the early morning or the later evening come July, August, or the hot times of your month. Alright, so that was the talk about safety. So baking soda, 1 tablespoon, 1 gallon of water. It's all set up. And again, I've shown you this before, so I'll just show it to you real quick. All in here is the leaf spot. These spots on the leaves. And when it's really active, you have the brown spots and halos around the plants. But you just want to get under there and soak the tops of the leaves, the undersides of the leaves. You can spray this. Baking soda is not going to hurt you. We eat that. And go all the way through and make sure you get the undersides of your plants. Any leaves that look bad, I'll do that after this video, is I'll come and I'll remove, but I like to spray first before I remove them. I like to coat everything. And that's all you really do. That baking soda will slow down and sometimes stop leaf spot. Early blight's a little more difficult. I've been using a Serenade for that, but I'm switching over now to the baking soda. Seems like the early blight is a little bit less prevalent now in my garden, and that comes with climate change. Alright, so let's pick some of these cherry tomatoes. And again, you can see the tops are really purple. That's from the anthocyanin, and that's the same pigment in blueberries. It's very good for you. When the sun hits these tomatoes, they turn purple. So the sun comes in here, the tops are purple, the bottoms are green, and actually you can almost make a tattoo. If you put like something on here and turned it towards the sun, everything would turn purple except for whatever you have under the piece of tape or something like that. So when you pick these, you want them to be really juicy. And when some of them start to split, that's the time. These are nice, deep red. When you press them, they really give. They're not hard in any way, and that's what you definitely want. That's the point of best flavor, when you press and your thumb will go in there and leave a dent, and it's nice and rubbery really. And look at just the color is beautiful. Now, when you come up to this one, you can see that it's more orange and purple. Just give these time, even though they look great and you want to eat them. Let's see if we have one in here. Yeah, the two up here. Give them that extra 7 days to mature so that when you press on them, your thumb really indents in there, and that's when they're sweetest. So let's take a look at the tomato, and just to be clear, this is an All-America Selections winner. AllAmericaSelections.org is a nonprofit organization that does yearly seed trials to find us the best new vegetables and flowers to market. They don't sell these seeds, they only declare the winners, and I think I said that these tomatoes were theirs. They're not. They declared Midnight Snack a winning tomato for last year, and if you go to AllAmericaSelections.org, you can find seed companies that sell these seeds. So here we are, mid-August, and again I want to stress, when you press on these, they should give nicely, and when you cut them open, they're just absolutely beautiful. Nice red color all the way through. The dark shoulders from the anthocyanin. This is when they're their most sweetest, when you let them stay on the vine just a little bit longer. And really from now, over the next 2 to 4 weeks, I'll be getting a ton of cherry tomatoes, and we'll do a closing video on this series. Instead of being 6 parts, it's going to be 5. Welcome to the Rusted Garden. This is the final video number 5 in growing cherry tomatoes from seed to really harvesting. This is my Midnight Snack. It's an All-America Selections winner, and it really is just about 8 feet tall. It's been growing really, really well. We're into the first week of September. Some leaf spot is coming there. That's fine. This plant's going to survive until the cold really starts coming. Today I'm going to harvest all of these indigo type cherry tomatoes, show you a little recipe that I used with them. And at the end of this video, basically we're just going to harvest and then plate them. At the end of the video, I'm going to put the other 4 videos so you can see how this grew from a seed in the ground to harvesting today. And the key for all the indigo types are the cherry tomatoes that are high in the anthocyanin. That's the dark purple color on there. Of course, it looks a little bit different now because they've turned red. But the sunlight will turn the green tomato, wherever it is exposed to the sun, purple, and that's got some good health benefits to it. But when you harvest these, you want them, again, like I said in the previous video, to let them get to the point where they're really rubbery. When you press on it, you can feel them, they're full of juice. You want them to go a little bit longer than you think because they can be a bit tart if you pick them too early. So these are all going to come off, and we're just going to fill up the bowl, and I'm just going to make a tomato salad. This is like my 4th harvest off of the Midnight Snack cherry tomato, and because they're not super sweet like some of the hybrid you buy, they have some tartness and tomato flavor to it. They're perfect for cucumber, onion, tomato salads, and I'm going to just go make a bowl of that for lunch today. And here's how I make my cucumber, onion, tomato salad. Really simple. Garlic powder, onion powder, sprinkle it in. Chopped up oregano from the garden, right from the plant over there. Now my onions I slice extremely thinly, salt them, give them about 10 minutes with salt because that'll draw the flavor out. Put that right in there. Same thing with the cucumbers, nice and thin, salt them, that'll draw out the cucumber flavor, mix it in. Don't over salt it right now. Get all these flavors mixed together and salt right at the end. Cover it with some red vinegar, some olive oil. Best way to mix it is with your hands so nothing gets crushed. Just fold it over really. Of course, make sure your hands are clean. And this is the simple way that I enjoy cucumbers, onions, and tomatoes from my garden. I make this all the time and probably eat most of my tomatoes this way. In future videos, I'm going to be planting the cool weather crops right here. The spinach, kales, and lettuces. Well, here comes the rain. I'm going to go inside and enjoy this. Thanks for watching this series. I'll put the first 4 videos at the end. If you've not subscribed to my channel, every year I do about 100 videos and I do them in real time. So if you're new to gardening and you want a little bit of help, subscribe to my channel and you can basically plant as I plant and grow as I grow. Thanks again for watching, and here's the first 4 videos.